Welcome friends, welcome back to the kitchen. I've had a lot of people over the last little while asking me to make beef jerky and biltong. And I'm going to get to biltong eventually this summer. I'm still researching recipes for that. But I thought today we'd do some beef jerky. And one of the recipes that I kept coming across that people really seem to love is this beef jerky that's marinated either in Dr. Pepper or Coca Cola before you smoke and dry it. And as I was looking at those recipes, it sort of struck a chord in the back of my brain. I remembered something, it seemed really familiar, and I realized that back in 2012, and I'll try to remember to link to the video, we did a video where we marinated strip loin steaks in Coca Cola with a bunch of the same ingredients before barbecuing them, and then we reduced the marinade down while the steaks were barbecuing into a really cool like a barbecue sauce that you based over top of the steaks. And as I compared the two recipes, I realized they all have the same components. They're all sort of from the same place, just slight differences in the ingredients, but the ingredients are all there to accomplish the same thing. So I've got Dr. Pepper in this pot. I'm going to add to it salt, black pepper, white pepper, garlic powder, and onion powder. Now I'm going to turn this up to sort of a medium heat. We want to bring it to a simmer and bring all of these flavors together and then simmer it down to reduce it by half eventually. Next in is jalapeno, and I put in fairly large jalapenos and I've chopped them up, 3 of them, and I'm even going to put the tops in, the whole pepper, everything. Next up, some soy sauce. I'm using tamari, but any soy sauce that you like or have in your fridge would work. All of these components come together and work for very interesting reasons. The pop, and you could use any pop. You could use Coca Cola, you could use root beer, you could use, I don't know, Sprite, RC Cola, Pepsi, any of those things. Any pop you could use in this recipe, because it's bringing flavor, but it's bringing much more than that. So it's bringing the liquid that you need for a marinade, obviously. It's bringing sugar, which you need for a marinade. It's bringing an acid in the form of a phosphoric acid, which starts to break down the meat fibers, along with the sugar a little bit. You're adding soy sauce to up the umami, or that sort of background flavor that really boosts the beef flavor. I'm going to add Marmite, because Marmite does exactly the same thing. It boosts all of those flavors. You don't taste the Marmite necessarily, but it brings a real big, beefy flavor to the end result. I'm also going to put in some of our homemade Worcestershire sauce, which technically isn't a fully brewed, fermented Worcestershire sauce, but it is amazing. It, again, boosts that bottom end umami flavor. I really like this stuff. Check that out, that other video out if you want to. This was made in 2019, and it's just now coming into its own. The flavors have all come together in a way that's just absolutely incredible. So I'm going to put some of that in. And of course, you can use regular Worcestershire sauce. This Henderson's Relish is something that I've recently discovered that is amazing instead of Worcestershire sauce. It's a little bit more tangy. It has more of a vinegar bite, but it brings everything together really nicely. So I've got a whisk in here. I'm just going to whisk this together. Don't stick your nose over the pot. It can be, as the steam comes off, it can be quite a lot to take in. And I'm going to reduce that down by half. In that time, the peppers will soften. Everything will come together. Okay, so I simmered the marinade away, and I've chilled it down at this point. I put it into the sink, circulated some cold water around the pot, stirred it, and I've brought it down quickly to room temperature. You don't have to bring it down quickly to room temperature, but you do want it to be at least room temperature or chilled to room temperature before you add it to the meat. Now, next thing, I picked up an eye of the round roast, very lean roast, and I'm going to slice it up here on the deli slicer. Your butcher might slice it for you. They may or may not, who knows. They might not have a deli slicer that they use for raw meat. You could also cut it with a knife. I've got it in the freezer just to chill it down so that it's easier to slice through. And on my slicer, I'm thinking I'm going to set it to 2.5 or 3 in terms of thickness. I don't want it to be too thin, and I don't want it to be too thick. Which brings us to the next question. Do you slice the meat with or against the grain? And there seems to be a lot of discussion about that online. Some people like it sliced with the grain. Some people like it sliced against the grain. I'm going to slice it across the face because I like the way that it bites apart, or when you chew it, how you can chew it apart. So the butcher already removed all of the fat off of the outside, which is something that you want to have happen. I'm going to put it on here and we will start slicing. Okay, sliced it all up. These can be dangerous. Many years ago, probably 2008 or 2009, I did a series of workplace safety ads for the government of Alberta, and one of them was about the slicer. I'll try to remember to link to that down below. It's a little bit funny, and it's a little bit not funny. So, I've got a big pile of meat here. I'm going to put this into this container. You could put it into a Ziploc bag if you use Ziploc bags. You can put it into a glass container. I've just got these commercial kitchen bins, which work really well. So, I'm going to wash my hands again, clear this away, and we'll move on. Now, we pour the marinade into the meat. Now, this is where the Ziploc bag probably has an advantage, because you can massage and make sure that every piece of meat is covered in the marinade. I'm just going to stir it, and I will probably stir this 5 or 6 times over the next 12 hours. I'm going to stick it in the fridge, and between now and bedtime, I will stir it a few times. When I get up in the morning, I'm going to stir it a few more times, and tomorrow we'll come back and we'll put it out on the smoker to do that final cook and dry of the meat. About 14 hours has gone by, and while this was in the fridge, I pulled it out a few times, gave it a shake, gave it a stir, went in with a fork, moved the pieces around to make sure that everything was completely covered in the marinade. That's a very important step. Don't overlook it. Now I'm going to put them out onto this rack on a tray. And the first few times I did this, I did what you're supposed to do, which is dry them off completely, put them back in the fridge, and get that pellicle, that sticky layer on the outside to form before putting them in the smoker. And by about the third time I realized that's not really necessary. Not strictly necessary. So I stopped doing it, and now I'll just sort of dab it off with a towel and then either stick it directly in the oven, which I've got preheated on convection to 175, or outside on the smoker, which again is preheated to 175 degrees Fahrenheit, and I'm burning maple today. So I'm going to get these out on a rack and dab them off. And of course, I'm going to mop off both sides, and I'm using a kitchen towel because I use cloth towels. If you use paper towels, go ahead and use paper towels for this operation. If you don't want to do it at all, don't bother. It's not that big of a deal. Now, I've set up the oven with a baking tray on the lower rack, and I'm going to put this cooling rack over top to allow the air to go around it. Close it up and move on to the smoker. Okay, same temperature as the oven inside, and we're using maple smoke. And I'm going to stick these into the smoker. I'm going to leave them on the racks that I put them on here, just because it's easier to move them about. And I'm going to leave them in here for about an hour. And an hour from now, I'll come and I'll rearrange the racks just to make sure there's no hot spots and to make sure that they're getting smoked evenly. I'll probably even turn them over at that point. We're a couple hours in at this point, and I have flipped them over, moved them around, sort of juggled them to try to keep them evenly cooking, evenly smoking. The smoker let me down at one point. It completely shut off and decided it was going to update its software right in the middle of a cook. Yoder, that's a problem. Shouldn't happen. So, got it back up and running. I think we'll be okay. Now, the color is fantastic, and it's really pliable, but it is pretty dry, and it tears relatively easily. So, I've got a container with a lid. I'm going to put all of the pieces in this container. I'm going to stick the lid on, and I'm going to leave it on the counter for an hour, hour and a half before we move on to the tasting. And I'm doing exactly the same thing with the ones in the oven. Hey, Jules.
Hi, Glenn. Hey, friends. Are these two different flavors?
Same flavor, two different cooking methods. So this one, with the beautiful red color, is done out on the smoker. And this one that's a little more browny, not as nice of color, was done in the oven.
Okay. Well, yeah, because more people have an oven. That makes sense.
So, break some off. And it's marinated in a Dr. Pepper thing. So my first impression, right from the point where I was cooking them, I sliced it too thin.
But it does, the thinness though, it's not unbearably chewy. You know how sometimes you get jerky and you've got a giant piece and it just like takes forever?
Yeah.
It's at least, you know, a bearable amount of chewiness.
So I think I'd make it a little bit thicker. I did it at 3, which, you know, means nothing. I might do it next time at 5 to make it thicker. The stuff that I did in the oven, I got a bright idea. I said, oh, I've got this brand new convection oven. Let's do it on convection. And it was far too efficient.
So they taste about the same.
Yeah.
I will say that this one's a little crispier.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
the convection was too strong. Or I didn't pay much attention to it as much as I should have, which, you know, happens. But I like the smoky flavor of this one. This one is more.
So I'll keep going back and forth because I can't really tell at this point. It's so peppery. I love it.
Really nice and peppery. A little bit of hot at the end on your tongue. Bit of sweetness from the pop, which is really nice. There's no Dr. Pepper flavor. Really what you're getting from the Dr. Pepper is the sugar and the acid.
The acid?
Yeah.
Yeah, those are both
yeah,
pretty decent jerkies. I'll take them camping.
We need them for a road trip. We can take them as a snack on a road trip. We can't get out of the
Can't
car.
get out of the car anywhere. We
But
keep driving around.
We just drive around eating jerky. So I think this is worthwhile. You could use any pop you want, any pop, as long as it's got sugar and acid, which is every pop.
I wonder though. I mean, okay, you say any, and then I think to myself, oh, I don't know about certain flavors.
I don't know. 7-Up would be pretty good.
Yeah,
I think.
yeah, 7-Up, like those ones. But I don't know that. I'm not sure if an orange pop would work for me. Like I don't know. Like I'm not sure about orange.
I think orange would work.
I don't know if you've made it with other types of
Yeah.
pop / soda.
Let us know down in the comments which pops or soda in certain parts of America you've used. Because Dr. Pepper is definitely not the only one that you have to use.
No.
Now, I've got half a bottle of Dr. Pepper left. So I'm going to do a couple of other things with it. I'm going to do a Dr. Pepper cake.
Woohoo, cake!
And like I said at the beginning of the video, we had done some things with Coca Cola in the past, making barbecue sauce and marinades. So I'm going to experiment farther with that because we have a fire pit coming. So we're going to be doing some open flame cooking this summer in the backyard. So stick around for that. Thanks for stopping by. See you again soon.